Britain's railways were once the envy of the world.
You could get a train from almost anywhere to almost anywhere else.
They were the network that supported an industrial superpower.
This is about as close as you can get to the early steam locos.
But today,
Oh, lovely.
4,000 stations and 8,000 miles of track lie silent.
This station feels truly lost.
So I'm setting off to discover more of Britain's lost railways.
This is amazing. Woo!
They tell a story
Look at this.
of how we once lived
This was not what I was expecting.
and how we once worked.
It looks like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
And they help reveal how our world has changed today.
Come on! I'm on my way to the far northwest tip of Wales, and with its miles of coastline and the mountains of Snowdonia, this is a part of Britain I always love coming to.
People flock to this corner of Wales to walk, climb, and simply bask in some of the best scenery this country has to offer. But before the visitors came the railways. Built to access and serve a region becoming famous for one special rock, slate. My access point, thanks to the surviving main line from England, is Bangor.
Welsh slate is known as the finest in the world, and for 150 years, the industry here was massive. It built railways, employed thousands, and made vast fortunes.
From Bangor, I'm going to be following the old coastline railway around to medieval Carnarvon, before heading inland to the heart of Snowdonia's slate-filled mountains. At Llanberis, I can still ride the railway that's carried visitors to the top of Snowdon for over 120 years. But before I leave Bangor, there's a small and much older railway to investigate. At the eastern edge of the city lies Port Penrhyn, once the gateway to the biggest money-making operation in North Wales.
It's all very peaceful and tranquil down here today. But if I'd been here, just across the water from Bangor, a century ago, this port would have been bustling with people, busy loading slate onto ships, ready to be taken off all around the world. And transporting all of that slate down from the hillside quarries to this point was a railway.
The tiny Penrhyn Railway was just 6 miles long and did nothing but move slate and its workers to and from the local quarry. But in these parts, it was an absolute game changer.
I've only come a few metres along the old railway line here, which is now called the Slate Trail, and there's a reminder straight away of what drove the whole economy of this area. There's a slate fence. I've never seen that before.
Slate has been quarried around here since the Roman age and used to floor and roof all manner of buildings. But for centuries, the problem was always how to move the very heavy stone to a seaport where it could be shipped far and wide. This problem wasn't solved until the Industrial Revolution and the arrival of a primitive railway.
Well, this is an interesting little feature of this lost railway. It looks like there's a split in the line because you've got two bridges going across the river. In fact, this was the original bridge, and it is a beautiful stone arch bridge. And that was built for the horse-drawn wagons, taking slate from the quarries down to the port. And that opened up around the turn of the 19th century. Whereas this bridge here was built a good 70 years later for steam-powered trains, leaving our poor little sister down here, sadly redundant. Fortunately, though, she's still there today, because not only do I enjoy a lost railway, I love a good bridge too.
Whether horse-drawn or steam-powered, this railway was always privately owned. And it was overlooked by the home of the family who paid for it. One thing's for sure, they could afford it.
The size of this place is just phenomenal.
Penrhyn Castle is nothing short of awesome. Perched on its own hill outside Bangor, it dominates the landscape.
Good morning, Nerys.
Hi, Rob.
How you doing?
Fine, thank you. Welcome to Penrhyn Castle.
And what a castle it is. This is phenomenal.
This place looks fit for a Norman lord. But as Nerys Jones can explain, Penrhyn is a medieval imposter.
So who built this castle then?
This castle was built for the Pennant family who owned the Penrhyn estate. They were huge landowners. They had farms, they employed the local quarrymen. They also consolidated lots of little slate quarries and made this huge big Penrhyn quarry.
The Penrhyn Quarry?
Yes. And they invested heavily improving the local roads around the estate, building schools in the local area, and to top it off then, this big fairy tale castle.
It is absolutely enormous. I mean, this must have cost not even a small fortune, a large fortune when it was built.
Yeah. It's rumoured that it cost around £150,000, which in today's money is over £50 million.
Is it really? I mean, that is a huge amount of money, but I'm not that surprised because the sheer scale of this place is enormous. It makes a real statement in this landscape, for sure.
This was built on the proceeds from slave trade in the West Indies. The Pennant family managed sugar plantations out there. That money then was brought back over here and it was ploughed into improving the Penrhyn estate. So this shows off the amount of power and wealth that the family had.
So despite the fortress-like appearance, Penrhyn was actually a fantasy creation of the industrial age.
Look at this. This is some welcome here, Nerys. The grandeur on the outside, it's absolutely brought inside as well, isn't it?
It definitely is, and this is the Grand Hall.
Absolutely stunning. It feels like there's a lot of different design styles as well, with different shaped arches and triangles. It's a lot to take in, Nerys.
Yeah, and it does look like an old medieval castle, but there are lots of signs, even in this room, that actually it was built in the 19th century.
Go on, you're going to have to enlighten me on those.
You can see over here this door. It's slightly off-centre with what looks like a larger door arch. So you would think that there was once a big Norman castle door in here and the castle's since been renovated and moved on and requires a smaller doorway.
That's very clever.
There's also new technology used in the building of this castle, and there's an example over here. It was one of the first households in Britain to have what is a form of central heating. It's an underground duct system.
So you had hot air coming up from here?
The hot air would blow up and heat this space along with the fireplaces. You can feel air coming up from it now.
You can. There's definitely air flowing from there. So there will be other ducts like this throughout the property?
Yeah, so they're obviously all linked together.
But just look how ornate this is. It's beautiful. There's nothing that's purely functional here. There's form behind every single aspect of this amazing castle.
This lavish home couldn't be more different from the gritty reality of what went on outside. I'm following the Penrhyn Quarry Railway as it progressed inland to the quarry itself. For 161 years, empty slate wagons trundled slowly up this short route, pulled by small locomotives, puffing hard as they climbed towards the Welsh hills. Just short of the quarry, and 150 metres higher than the port, a collection of original buildings still survive.
Well, the line's brought me here to this small industrial estate in the hills just above Tregarth. But this was actually the terminus at the Quarry end of the Slate Railway line. But this was also the engineering works for the quarry. And it was in all of these buildings around here where the processing and the cutting of the slate would take place to cut these huge chunks like this down into the small, finer slates that would then get loaded onto wagons and taken off down the port.
That process continued until the railway closed in 1962. But by then, it had had a lasting impact.
Yes, here we go. This is why I've come up here. Just look at that. The Penrhyn Slate Quarry. This is the reason the slate line existed. And it is just vast.
Slate had been quarried here since the 16th century, but until the railway arrived, very little of it could leave the local area. This gigantic hole was a product of the railway age.
It's roughly a mile in length and 1,200 feet deep. Now, you can't really get the full extent of that depth because about half of it now is full of water. That goes way, way down below there. Stood here right now, I feel absolutely minuscule. By the end of the 19th century, this was the largest slate quarry in the world, producing around 120,000 tons of slate every year. This was a global industry. But today, there's a very different industry in town.
Here in North Wales, I've found my way to the Penrhyn Slate Quarry.
It is just phenomenal.
From Sydney to South Africa, this site has roofed and floored buildings across 5 continents. But none of this could have happened before 1801, when a groundbreaking railway was built, linking the quarry to the coast, next to Bangor. The quarry too was once filled with 60 miles of short tracks and wagonways. Today, their position is flooded with water. But this giant industrial scar has now found a new role. It's home to the fastest zip line in the world. So there's only one thing to do.
Looks like a glove. Let's go for it.
The quarry is so massive, there's a 3-mile track to reach the top of the zip line. So I'm grabbing a lift with Tim Pennington, who works for the new industry in town.
Tim.
Hello. How
Hi.
you doing? Nice to meet you.
I'm in your hands. Do you get all sorts of people coming and doing this?
We do indeed, yes. I think one of our oldest riders was in her 90s, and we get people from all over the world joining us.
This isn't the first time the quarry's drawn a crowd. The early Victorians used to come here to marvel at a natural wonder of the industrial age. From the track, you can clearly see the tiered galleries cut into the quarry walls, where workers could shelter with their mates from the worst of the Welsh weather. These days, it's all about racing your mates.
Are you ready for this race, Tim?
I am ready for this race, are you?
Oh, that was a menacing look you gave me there. I was.
This business now employs over 300 people, a long way short of the 3,000 who once toiled in the quarry below, though. And without their work, none of this would be possible.
Very good. Feels like going for a massage or something. I think it's less relaxing than that. The view from here suddenly got very real. Oh, take the strain. That's a mile long, and I'll be down the other end in under a minute.
If you want to go fast, then the trick is to keep your legs fully extended, your elbows in and your head forward, so you're nice and aerodynamic.
How's everyone feeling, all right? Nervous. Nervous, good. Yeah, Tim, I'll see you there first, boy.
Oh, you're good.
I am ready.
6, safety's up.
Oh,
And in 3, 2, 1.
Yes! Woo-hoo-hoo! Woo-hoo! It's so fast beneath me! Wow! This place is amazing! This place was once full of people quarrying out the slate. Now it's just me flying over the top. And I think I'm winning! Come on! I've got it! I've got it! Yeah! Oh! Woo!
That is brilliant. The heart is going like the clappers. Tim, that was wicked, mate.
excellent. Well
Thank
done.
you so much. That was awesome
Beat me
fun.
by a long way, my friend.
I didn't feel like you were that much behind me.
Oh, I was quite a way behind. I think.
Photo finish.
Not quite. I think you would.
That's brilliant, Tim, mate. Thank you so much
Excellent.
indeed.
But there's one big question remaining. Why did the original industry here disappear, prompting the closure of this slate railway? To help answer that, I'm meeting Fred Buckley in the neighbouring village of Tregarth.
Hey, Fred.
And welcome to Tregarth.
Thank you very much. It's
Nice to
lovely
see
to
you
meet
again.
you.
Fred was the 4th generation of his family to work in the slate industry.
It did employ a lot of locals, didn't it, the slate
The
industry?
quarry was employing all the locals. I always had to travel with the engine driver and the fireman
On the slate train?
On the engine itself. Others were travelling on the wagons. And there were 3 engines on the main line, Blanche, Charles and Linda.
So the slate trains would go between the quarry and the port. I mean, how often were
4
trains?
times a day. Every run, we used to call it, had about 60, 70 wagons.
Wales once produced 80% of all British slate. And in 1899, Penrhyn Quarry earned its owners £13.5 million in today's money. But this peak of success led to a dark chapter in the history of North Wales, and in part to the slate industry's demise. Lord Penrhyn refused to improve his workers' pay and conditions. The result was the longest industrial dispute in British history and deep divisions in the local community.
Some of the blacklegs that broke the strike lived in these houses. They called it the Telltale Terrace.
Telltale Terrace?
Yes.
These cottages were built by Lord Penrhyn for workers who returned to work, folk who were then turned upon by those living elsewhere.
They used to put cards in the windows that no blacklegs are living here.
Oh, as a statement to say,
The statement that there
We're
was
on
no,
strike.
Yes, we're on strike. They were fighting and they were throwing rocks through the windows and people who broke the strike.
really?
It was a terrible time here, my grandfather used to tell me.
And Welsh slate would never fully recover. The halt in production shook confidence in the industry, and cheaper slate was now to be found in Spain.
Does any of that tension or animosity still exist today?
Well, I remember when I started in the quarry
Yeah.
at the age of 15, the first thing they wanted to know was who was your grandfather, in case your grandfather had broken the strike.
Really?
The first thing they wanted to know.
So that's 50 years,
yes,
roughly,
yes, yes,
after the strike.
Yes,
It was that strong still?
it
that
was
they wanted
still
to
that
know
strong.
To this day, there are still many in Tregarth and in neighbouring villages who won't set foot in the home of Lord Penrhyn. It's time for me to pick up the lost line heading out of Bangor that once hugged the Welsh coastline. But just 2 miles along, it passes something that still very much exists.
A few little flash glimpses through the trees here. Something I want to show you.
Wales suffered more than most during the railway closures of the 1960s. If the infamous Dr. Beeching had had his way, then Wales today might have just one line. The reality was not quite so drastic. And the glorious link to the Isle of Anglesey was saved.
It might be a wet day here in North Wales, but nothing can dampen my spirits when I'm faced with this, the Britannia Bridge. Now, this isn't the original bridge. That burnt down very sadly in the 70s. But what does remain from the original bridge are these beautiful stone towers in the middle of the Menai Strait there. It's absolutely gorgeous. You can see there's traffic going across the top there. But the original bridge was purely a railway bridge, and that took trains across from the mainland, as it still does today, over to Holyhead on Anglesey.
But this is the point where I leave the modern railway and follow the old line south to Carnarvon. The line followed the Menai Strait, a notorious narrow stretch of water that Nelson described as the most difficult to navigate in the world. The old railway line makes for a far more reliable passage, and is taking me to my second Welsh castle. Carnarvon is the stuff of picture books. And unlike Penrhyn, there's nothing phony about this place. It's been impressing visitors since before the railway age. So when they did come, lines into town kept a low profile through a series of cuttings and tunnels.
And all the lines converged here at Slate Quay.
The Rivermouth area in front of the giant castle once bustled with railway activity. And it's where I'm meeting seasoned tour guide Sue Kirk.
Hello.
Hi, Rob.
Very nice to meet you.
And you too.
This is something, isn't it? Quite a welcome.
The most impressive castle you'll ever see.
How long's the castle been here then?
The building work started in 1283. So what you're looking at is over 700 years old.
700 years old, built by who then?
Well, built by Edward I, and it's built to reflect the power that he now held in North Wales and establish English rule and law here. Because of course here in the castle in 1969, we had the investiture of Prince Charles, who was invested as Prince of Wales here.
Here in the castle.
In the castle itself.
Which must have been a huge event for the castle, for the town of Carnarvon, for the whole of North Wales.
It was. It was the centre of the world because it was broadcast. It was the first royal ceremony to go out in colour, and it was watched by 39 million people worldwide.
Wow.
And to start his big day, what did Charles do? But arrive by train. In fact, he and his family were amongst the last passengers to travel the line I've just followed from Bangor. The railway closed just months later at the start of 1970. The rest of that day, though, was a timeless showcase of British pomp and pageantry.
Wow.
So we're standing on the dais, which was built specially for the ceremony for Prince Charles in 1969.
Here, where we stood here, right now?
Right here.
I'm going to assume that is local Welsh
It
slate.
is slate. This came from Penrhyn Quarry.
Lovely. OK, I'm Prince Charles, I'm stood here now, I'm looking out. What might I have seen here?
Well, you would have just seen a sea of faces. You'd see everybody in ceremonial dress. You'd be kneeling before your mother and your father with the mayors and choristers all around. Lots of ceremony.
The Queen takes the new Prince of Wales and presents him to his people at the Queen's Gate.
As Prince of Wales, Charles received the accepted title of the heir to the throne. And like dozens of his predecessors, his Welshness is a little questionable.
Why did that investiture take place here?
Well, it goes back to a much older tradition that the first English Prince of Wales was born here. The story is that Edward I had promised the Welsh a prince born in Wales who could speak no English. The implication being he'd nominate a Welsh prince who would speak Welsh. In fact, he brings his wife here. She gives birth to a son, and it's his own newborn son that he takes and presents as the Welsh prince, born in Wales, who can't speak English or anything else.
So a little bit of trickery there.
A little bit of trickery. He does become the first English Prince of Wales. He's known as Edward of Carnarvon all his life. He becomes Edward II. That's why we have the ceremony here.
Wow.
that this is the Welshest town in Wales.
Right, yeah.
So about 90% of the local population speak Welsh as their first language. It's what people speak at home. Children here are taught in Welsh in schools. And part of that identity is a rejection of the English Prince of Wales. So,
And in that sense, not that much has changed in the 700 years since the castle was built, I guess.
there is still a slight antipathy there, yes, you could say that.
That said, I hasten to add, I feel very welcome here.
I think you'll find the Welsh people are the most welcoming people in the world.
I wouldn't disagree.
As long as you're not an English prince.
I can vouch on the royal dais. I am not an English prince.
Then you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Sue.
I'm in North Wales, exploring just a few of the many railway lines that once littered this landscape.
This simple beam bridge is a lovely little relic from this lost line. I can't get across it because it's not actually safe anymore. So many of the lines here were built to carry the local slate, from the quarries in the hillside down to the coast to be sent off around the world. But this one's a little different. A small local line that ran right into the heart of the Snowdonia mountains. And it was built with people in mind.
Already, I've followed the main coastal railway that once ran between Bangor and Carnarvon. But now I've turned inland, following a 9-mile branch line opened in 1869, leading to the heart of Snowdonia.
I'm getting right into the mountains now. The interesting thing about this valley is that it juggled both heavy industry and tourism. And this was a handy line, bringing in all those visitors from Carnarvon right along the valley to experience the lakes, the forests, and of course, the highlight of this region, Mount Snowdon.
Wales's Great Mountain was undoubtedly the big draw. But for 2 miles, the railway followed the beautiful shores of Lake Penrhyn, ideal for well-heeled and slightly adventurous Victorians, the first folk to visit this mountainous region for fun.
Up there would have been a great spot to watch the steam engines thundering through from.
At the end of the line was the village now firmly established as a hub of Snowdonian holidays.
Today, Llanberis is full of cafes and ice cream parlours, B&Bs and climbing shops, but you don't have to look too hard to find evidence of this town's industrial past. It was once one of the great quarrying communities of North Wales.
Until 1969, the village struck a delicate balance between visitors and heavy industry. Today, the visitors rule the roost. But you only have to gaze across the valley to see the massive scars of the local industry. At their foot,
How you going?
Fine, thank you.
I'm meeting Elphin Jones-Roberts of the National Slate Museum.
You can't come here without noticing there are bits of railways kicking about here. It's actually quite hard to figure out what goes where and what's part of what.
This line behind us is the Dinorwig Quarry line, and this line was used to transport the slates down to the docks, and they used to carry the men to and from work.
A little commuter service,
Yes,
was it?
and it's still used today, carrying visitors to the area along the lakeside.
I mean, the railways were just so important to this part of Wales.
I mean, they were like veins, really. They were bringing life into this part of the country. You know, they were carrying slates and goods and all sorts.
There we are, a few furry friends come to join us, Elvin.
Yes, yeah, the local mountain goats, they tend to come down where the weather's taking a turn for the worse. Yeah.
Here they are today. Oh, this is it, is it? This is unbelievable, Elvin. What exactly are we looking at here, then?
This is the V2 incline. So this is one of 5 inclines that looked after this particular quarry, the Vivian Quarry, hence the name V2.
And what was this used for?
So this is the means of transporting the slates down the side of the mountain, down to this level here, which is where the main train used to take them down to the docks.
Because we're talking about a steep incline of the mountain itself.
Yes, we are, yeah.
So when you're carrying heavy slate trying to get that down, this was how it was done.
That's how they're done, yeah.
So this operates mainly under gravity then, does it?
That's right, yeah, gravity powered. So the full wagons would be going down, and they'll be pulling the empty ones up to be refilled with slates.
This is one heck of a piece of engineering. This incline that's been built out of slate alone, I mean, it's beautiful actually.
It is, and all that is dry stone wall as well, you know. It's fantastic, isn't it? Yeah.
It's stunning.
Yeah.
All right. So we're way up the top here now.
So here we are at the winding house.
So this is where all the mechanism for the incline was kept?
Yeah, this is the rack and pinion for the brake. So you'd operate this wheel here.
Yeah.
By turning this, you would clench the wooden brake on the drum, slowing the speed of the incline down. You had a very expensive cargo in slates, so you'd have to be very careful. And if you were to break any slates, you'd end up paying for them as well.
And you'd probably have some really unhappy customers. The labourers up here whose slate would have been broken as well.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's a very, very busy place as well, this particular incline.
Aha.
So here we are. We've got 2 wagons full of slate ready to go down the incline. As soon as the brakeman releases the brake, these wagons start moving.
Can we, well, let gravity do its work?
Yep, let's go for it. Stand back. Here we go.
We're off.
There we are, we're off. So Rob, if we have a look here now, what we've got is we've got the drum, and then in the corner there, that's the drum brake to slow the incline down.
So that would have been wooden brake pads on those calipers,
Yeah, very, you know, very similar to a bicycle brake type of thing, you know, you squeeze and...
Just squeezing the wheel, controlling it.
Controlling the speed, yeah.
It's so simple, isn't it, really?
So simple, exactly, yeah.
But massively effective.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
You've got the other one coming up as well now.
That's right, yeah. So they'll be swapping over the wagons. The full wagons now will be loaded onto the train, and then these empty wagons coming up, they then will be refilled with slate. So it's just a continuous cycle.
I mean, it's just lovely to see part of this now lost industry still in action here. Thank you so much. Or I should probably say diolch.
Croeso, Rob, croeso.
Cheerio, Owen. Thanks again.
Incline railways like this littered the hills on this side of the valley. Vivian Quarry alone needed 5 of them. But elsewhere around the valley, the quarrymen didn't have quite so much to help them. This rare colour film from 1946 shows a quarryman going about his daily routine. Seems all you need is a solid rope and a decent pair of boots. These days, a few more things are needed if you want to try your hand at quarry climbing. I'm now in the hands of local climbing instructor, Iona Pawson.
How difficult is it climbing on slate?
It's interesting, is the way I put it. It's very technical. A lot of people come here to test their technical rock climbing, as well as to test their mental ability to stay strong.
Well, I'm testing both up here today. I know you may say this is one of the easiest routes or whatever. I've got both here. Technical ability, head game. I've looked at it, we've talked about it. Can we do it?
Yeah, of course.
And with that, she was off, leaving me and instructor Alice to hold the all-important rope below.
I'm watching your every move here.
It's quite a hard first move. There's a good left handhold here, and then a really little one up there.
Snowdonia has a history of attracting the very best climbers. The likes of Mallory and Irvine and Edmund Hillary all trained here before their attempts on Mount Everest.
What's going in there now? Those are called what?
These are nuts.
These are called nuts, okay. Well, very pleased I'm not having to put these in. I wouldn't trust me doing it.
Safe, Rob.
Lovely. So Iona's reached the top now. And then all I have to do is climb up. This is easy.
Climb when ready, Rob.
Lovely. So I'm quite side on. Is that all right for this
Yeah,
bit?
that's quite all right. Yeah. That's it, lovely.
Can find another little... Oh, that's good. Oh, some lovely holes here.
Yeah, it's lovely.
This is great.
Really nice texture.
Now, and you went that way to get yourself into there. This is brilliant. I'm absolutely loving this. Incredible views out across here. I mean, this is beautiful Snowdonia, isn't it?
It is stunning. And we can see the back end of Snowdon coming down over there as well. And that's where the railway comes down, so it's amazing.
That's where I'm hoping to end up, if this goes well.
Yeah.
Dozens of people have climbed this man-made rock face before me. Many for fun. But not so long ago, folk did it without harnesses and helmets. Because it was their job. What's more, to go down, they simply wrapped their rope around their leg and descended like an acrobat.
That's something else. That's proper bravery.
Yeah. I don't think I could do it.
Absolutely.
That's it. Hello. Nearly there.
Yes.
You made it. All
King
right.
of
High five.
Nice.
Nice job. Awesome.
We've done it. That's fantastic. It's great fun, but the whole time I'm thinking about the old quarrymen and just how different it would have been for them, doing similar things, but once you're there having to actually work the rock face, it's just incredible.
I'm in Snowdonia, where railways have tended to mean one of two things: Welsh slate or tourism. In fact, some of the tiny slate lines around Llanberis have escaped closure by turning to visitors. But before I leave, I can't ignore a famous railway that's been drawing crowds for generations and taking them to the top of Wales's highest mountain.
Now, railway engines are notoriously bad at going uphill. Anything more than a 1 in 40 incline can spell trouble. When they're fighting gravity, the wheels just can't get enough grip on the rails. But this railway is different. This can deal in anything up to a 1 in 5.5 slope, which is much, much steeper and pretty handy if you're trying to get to the top of Mount Snowdon. But it can do that because of something called a rack and pinion system.
And I've been given permission to take a closer look.
Step down. This toothed rail that runs all the way along the line in the middle between the two wheel rails is called the rack, and underneath the engine there's something called a pinion. It's a toothed wheel like a gear, and the teeth of that wheel, as it turns from the engine, sit and run along the teeth of the rack here, and it pulls the train along. And when it gets really steep, it's almost as though the train is walking up these toothed steps. Without this system, there's no way this train could reach the top of Snowdon.
And the system's been working for 123 years now.
We're off.
As long ago as 1869, when the passenger railway from Carnarvon reached Llanberis, the idea of a railway to the peak of Snowdon was put forward. But it was only when a rival line up the other side of Snowdon was proposed that the landowner here relented and construction got underway.
This railway opened in April 1896. It took a labour force of 150 men with shovels and picks and dynamite to lay about 8 kilometres of track. And it only took them about 14 months.
To late Victorian tourists, well used to railways, but not so well used to the great outdoors, the country's only mountain climbing train was a major success. Amazingly, 3 of the railway's original locomotives are still in operation on the line today.
When you get onto these steeper bits, you can feel the rumble, and you can hear the rumble of the rack and pinion working away underneath. We're roughly about the halfway mark here up the railway, so we pull in and stop to fill the loco up with water. Thirsty work coming up here for the engine.
And whilst the locomotive has a drink, there's a chance for me to speak to Dowie Morris, my trained conductor.
So it's still just as popular as it ever was.
Oh yes, it's more popular now than before. We're always sold out.
And what about the weather up Snowdon? Is that a limiting factor for the railway? Because it's changeable up here, isn't it?
Rain doesn't stop us, it's the wind. If the wind's far too strong for us, and then we have to curtail our services, so we can usually go up in quite poor visibility, really. As you can see, the mist is over the summit, so it may not be so fantastic up there.
It might not be the vistas that maybe I was hoping to get, but it's a heck of a journey anyway, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm enjoying the ride.
On a clear day, the views on the railway's upper section are spectacular, making it clear why 130,000 people use the railway each year. And in the process, make Snowdon the busiest mountaintop in Great Britain. And believe it or not, this is the top of Snowdon.
Well, this is it. I have reached the end of my journey. I'm at the top of Snowdon. I'd really hoped to be rewarded with some kind of glorious view back out over the northwest coast of Wales, but no such luck today. But hey, I'm a tourist and this is tourism. You never know what you're going to get.
In that sense, nothing in North Wales has changed since men battled the elements to keep the slate trains loaded. And if it wasn't for those times, then this modern world of walkers, rock climbers, and even zipliners would look very different indeed.
Over time, the railways and the landscape have transitioned more towards serving people and visitors. And while the slate economy may have suffered a sad decline, it feels to me like tourism here is booming, and the railways are still part of that.
Next time,
Bit of work to get here, but it is well worth it.
it's the railway that opened eyes to the Scottish Highlands.
Balmoral Castle.
This line was packed with local industry.
She's beautiful.
And with Queen Victoria firmly on board, it gave us Royal Deeside.
It was about the best bit of marketing a rural railway ever had.